the biggest challenge is to get into every situation and carry radical humility to be in receivership and say, I am of service. I'm working so hard, whether I'm in that office of Eddie DeBartolo saying, I'm of service to both of you, to Steve Young and to the 49ers to figure this out.
I'm Andy Petronic, the co-founder of the Whole Life Challenge, the inspirational game that helps thousands of people around the globe take action each day to improve their health, fitness, and well-being. Join me each week on the Andy Petronic podcast for interviews with guests that will help give you ideas, get inspired, and take action toward being the best and healthiest version of yourself you can be. David Meltzer, welcome to the Breaking Ordinary podcast.
Right on. Great to be here.
This is a record for me. It's the earliest I've ever gotten up to record an episode of the podcast. I mean, I get up early anyway, but I don't have my makeup on. I still don't have my makeup on, but I don't record early. You're an early riser.
I'm already back from the gym. I'm back from the gym.
Fantastic. How long has that been a habit of yours, getting up early?
You know, I started in law school because what would happen is I'd wake up early and I'd wear myself out for 2 hours in bed worrying about things. And so I finally decided, you know what? Why don't I just get up and start doing things? And when I did that, I realized, wow, what a productive and accessible time 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. was.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, I get up at 4:45, and I thought that was early. I'm not. I got some work to do to catch up to you. Shit, that's another hour I could capture. That's fantastic.
I tell people all the time, it's not a competition.
What time do you go to bed to make that work?
You know, it's funny because I try to make it to 11 every day. I don't make it to 11 because I don't go to bed. I pass out. I could be in the middle of a conversation on the couch, you know, hopefully not driving, but pretty close. I actually won't drive past 9 o'clock for that reason.
Wow.
Because I never know. My habit is just to pass out and run out of energy. And I don't ever want to be kind of behind the wheel dozing off.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever? Do you pass out on the couch, or do you actually go to bed? Do you actually make it into your bedroom?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So because the one thing I'm always with somebody. You know, I'm very rarely, except for the 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. You know, I'm pretty much around family, friends, associates. You know, I'm always around people, so they'll wake me up and send me to bed.
Right, totally. It's funny because I've been blessed with that being able to fall asleep anywhere gene too. I don't know if it was because I was in the Marine Corps and I learned how to do it. You know, I could fall asleep on a conveyor belt or on top of my duffel bag or with my M16, you know, draped over my forehead. You know, like I just can fall asleep. I would fall asleep in bars. So it's a nice thing to be able to have, but sometimes it's annoying.
Yeah, I know it can be, especially your wife. But
yes, totally.
Yes. Those who can fall asleep like that have, number one, utilized all their energy correctly, and two, probably have a clearer conscience than most. Yeah,
well, I hope that's right. That sounds good. I'm gonna go with that. Whatever the reason is, I'm going with that. So tell me, you know, I've got your books, and we had a fantastic conversation when Michael and I came down for your podcast. But you know, who in the Western world that's had the amount of success that you have has goodness and compassion and soul, and who writes books like that does what you do? Like I mean, it's a very strange combination of you know, it's very unexpected from my end.
Yeah, and I think that's the power in it, is that the credibility of being compassionate, being kind, being good, comes from my credibility in the most competitive, backstabbing, scarce industry in the world, sports and entertainment. Yeah. And so I think it's really important for especially kids who dream of being Jerry Maguire, that dream of being, you know, Dave Meltzer or those like that, to understand that you don't have to live in a scarce world, that there's enough of everything for everyone, and that providing value is the key. And so that became, you know, my brand, my frequency, my mission is to really, I think, project onto others. Look, You don't have to. I'm as competitive as anybody else. In the conscious world, what I think, say, and do, I know how to negotiate, but I negotiate by shifting the paradigm of value. I trust the universe that if I provide $100 of value and only ask for 20 back, things will work better for me than for the old manipulating David who would give $20 and take $100 back.
Right. Well, isn't that the principle you talk about in your book, the PEN principle? Is it called the PEN principle? Or the PEN something?
The PEN value.
The PEN value.
PEN value, yeah. Named after my favorite example of how you can close any deal, as well as in honor of my wife's maiden name, which was Penn, Penn. But I started learning that, I can close any deal if, number one, people buy on emotion for logical reasons. So I wanted to first connect emotionally and then give the reasons, the impacts, and capabilities that had more value guaranteed than I was asking for. And I could logically, I wouldn't go in front of anyone unless I could logically communicate and articulate, can you see any reason you would want to move forward? But not only communicate it, but also believe and feel it in my energy. I'll turn around, if my energy isn't right, I'll turn around and walk out of the room. Because I know regardless of what I think, say, and do, if my energy isn't conveying that, look, can you see any reason why you wouldn't want to do this? It doesn't matter what I say, think, or do. People will not connect to that. They will not feel the value, and they'll always have some sort of shortage, void, or obstacle in wanting to move forward. But if you carry the energy that, I'm giving you more, there's no reason you wouldn't want to do this. And I use the pen that I can sell anybody a pen for $1 million in 30 seconds, and I guarantee I can sell it.
Well, I mean, the example in the book, the escrow account and the no interest loan, and I'm like, okay, well, why would I not? I don't see necessarily the value in that pen that's in the book, but why not? Like, there's nothing to there's no risk. If you
yeah, right. I've infused value by reducing or mitigating all risk, right? I've infused the value that I've made you sure and confident that it's worth $2 million, even though I'm selling it to you for $1 million.
Right, because if you believe that and you're willing to go to those lengths to stand behind what you're offering, then it makes me think, well, what does he know that I don't? Right,
because I use as examples, what if that pen was full of diamonds? Right? What if it was the only one made, and it was actually the pen that, Shakespeare used? I don't know, but there's so many emotional nuances that create an irrationality of middle-aged people who have extraordinary wealth. Why do you buy one painting for $100 million and another you can't give away? Right. Because we give meaning to everything that we see. And so the meaning that I want to portray or convey is of value greater than that which I'm asking, and be able to convey it with a guarantee, with some sort of guarantee to mitigate all risk. And it's very important for people to understand that we give meaning to everything we see, nobody else.
So how do you do that with like a football player or a baseball player, as an agent, because there's so many risks that are outside of your control in the game of football. That's the most obvious one.
So what I use, what I use is a 9-box system. So utilizing my legal background, I start with an open-ended question. So I'll ask, what are you guys doing today for this? For this position, for this player? What are we doing today? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? The reason I ask those two questions is that now I can make an emotional connection. I take it out of the logical realm. So I immediately, if I can get you to connect to me emotionally by talking about the way you feel, right? Because now I know your meaning. I know your meaning and your value in that player. Now from there, I talk about the closed-ended questions. Well, wouldn't it help if you had a running back that could catch out of the backfield? Well, wouldn't it help, right? And I go from there with logical reasons. And then I always summarize the reasons with, from what you told me, you need somebody like C.J. Anderson, because if Todd Gurley gets hurt, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then I go on to, what impact is your current running back having today? Or what impact is it having that you don't have the running back? Or what impact, what do you like about that? What don't you like about that? Once again, using closed-ended question, would it help to have a back that can block the backside of Goff? And I'll go through and literally, once again, connect emotionally. What do you like? What you don't like? Use closed-ended questions, leading questions to get them to the values of what my player has. And then once again, summarize at the end. And from what you told me, you need somebody like CJ for this, and this. And then finally the capabilities, I do the exact same thing. And at the end, my close is always, from what you've told me, here's the reasons that you want to sign CJ. Here's the impact that CJ is going to have. Here's the capabilities that you have, want, or need that CJ has. Can you see any reason we won't want to move forward? And, I always know three things. I won't negotiate for the last penny. I'm always fair, and I won't do business with dicks. So those are the three rules of negotiation. And, it's not unrealistic. I don't ask for things that I can't come with that pen value either, right? I'm not asking for $20 million a year for a running back that's worth $4 million. So part of that is to do the same thing to my client and allow him to talk about his own reasons, his own impact, and his own capabilities and his value, so that I've managed expectations on both sides. One of the biggest mistakes that agents make is that they oversell, back-end sell, and manipulate their clients. Not the team, right? Not the team. They've oversold. They've been manipulators. I'm a motivator, not a manipulator. And I spent years being a manipulator. I can back-end sell, oversell, anybody, anything. I can manipulate and lie. I was a great salesman in my 20s, thinking I was a salesman when I was nothing more than a manipulator. I've learned to be a motivator. I've learned to provide value, to guarantee things, to know and live up to a standard, a potential, and keep my trajectory towards that potential like nobody else. And that's where you're kind to your future self. People appreciate honesty. They appreciate transparency. And I know the first question you ask me, is anything off limits? It never is, because I illuminate all of my great things, and I illuminate all of the deficiencies that I have, the areas that I'm trying to improve upon, and hopefully motivating other people to say, hey, look, I'm not perfect, but I'm living a great life, and I continue to expand, and I continue to strive and pursue and enjoy that pursuit.
So many questions I could ask.
Sorry.
Are there any particular negotiations or deals that you've made that that particularly stand out, that there are examples of this, like that you're proud of, that you could talk about?
Yeah, sure. I look back on one that Leigh did, because he was the lead, right? Leigh Steinberg, who most people know as Jerry Maguire. But when he signed Steve Young to the Niners, it was a really big deal, because Joe Montana was still there, and he was the legend. And how could San Francisco, and Eddie DeBartolo was under a ton of different pressures, and Carmen policy, and it was a really big deal. And Leigh, through the negotiation, stuck to this idea of, I'm going to provide value, right? And, getting outside the emotional aspect of the Joe Montana relationship, which was very tight, and so they got thrown out of Eddie's office, and it was about 2 a.m. They got thrown out, and Steve was mad at Leigh, and Leigh looked at him confidently in the eye and said, if I don't have a deal by 7 a.m., fire me. That's how confident he was.
Wow. That
he had utilized fairness. He had utilized, and Leigh, it takes a lot of hard work to provide value. Leigh had gone through and analyzed the cap. He had basically structured how they could afford Steve Young, how this would work. He had done all the work for them, knowing that that's the only way the deal would get done. Mm-hmm. And he was confident because he worked through all the numbers. He worked through the emotional aspect. He knew that he wasn't negotiating the last penny. He was fair, and that Carmen and Eddie were good guys, and that they would come to a logical conclusion that they couldn't see any reason. So, he knew as he left there, the deal was done. Now, Steve, who doesn't negotiate every day,
right,
felt differently. And, he thought he was crying when he left the office. He was crying with joy when Leigh signed the deal, and it was correct.
I mean, was it literally that night, overnight, that by 7 a.m., literally the deal happened?
By 7 a.m., first call of the day, which is funny because I left Leigh's office when I met him. I wasn't looking for a job. And he asked for my cell phone as I was leaving. I spent about 5 hours negotiating a deal for a reality show called Showtime with Magic Johnson for a friend. It was just a favor. I never met really Leigh. I shook his hand at the Super Bowl once, but I never talked to him before. And I told my wife when I got home, which was late because I lived in San Diego, he lived in Newport Beach. I said, gosh, I just have this feeling Leigh's going to call me tomorrow and ask me to work for him. Huh. And she's like, what are you talking about? I go, I don't know. I go, and sure enough, I woke up at 4. I got a text message at 6:45 a.m. Can you come back up here today? I need to speak with you. And it was almost the same feeling. I went back up there, and I wasn't selling myself. It was just, I believe in the universe, as you know, and unraveling. The reason I got the job, people ask me, how do you go from technology to the best job in sports, running the most notable sports agency within 48 hours? And the way that it happened was, one, I was of service to my friend. I didn't limit the point of entry. I never have. My career is all over the place. And when I went up there, I was only trying to connect them emotionally and provide value. And when I did so, it unraveled to this offer, and I allowed the universe to provide me what I dreamed of doing when I went to law school. But here I was almost 20 years later, wow, getting the dream job without trying.
That's amazing. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Was this before or after that shift you said you made from manipulator to value provider?
It was after, but very, very recent after. I was going through a transition when I met Leigh. I called it a quantum shift. I actually lost all my money about 2 years into working for Leigh. Even though I'd gone through my shift, I created the problems and the causes years before.
Right.
And and I had an extraordinary amount of money, so I tell people all the time, you don't lose that much money overnight.
Right.
Right. Yeah, there's a variety of different things that I did that caused me to have to, claim bankruptcy and change my life for the better. I will tell you that losing everything was the best thing that ever, better than even working for Leigh. Losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's hard to get your head around.
But it is, and it's funny because through gratitude, forgiveness, accountability, and effective communication, that's what to me provided that enlightenment of I'm blessed to be able to learn what I've learned, had the miracles of the past, but still, not go down the road. If I could have even hung on to 20 million of my dollars, I think I might have either been dead, in some sort of addiction, which I didn't want to be in, or divorced. And to me, all three of those would have been a Shakespearean tragedy. Mm-hmm. But, it would have been horrible because I feel like I was born with so much potential and so much purpose, and it all would have been wasted if I didn't hit rock bottom to get a restart and relook at everything.
How is that connected? I think a lot of times people don't draw connect the dots between what you're doing in business, what you're doing to make money, and then what's happening in your personal life. Like you mentioned your wife and being divorced and addiction, things that are not necessarily related to business. I mean, I think they are, but a lot of people don't connect those dots. How did those dots connect for you?
I came up with a philosophy of activity, and it changed my perception. It changed the meaning of what I see. So I believe that in the conscious world, the pragmatic world, that we have 24 hours of activity. And that's why sleep is so important to me as well, because it's just an activity. I look at activities as if, one, I get paid for certain activities and I don't get paid for certain activities. But they're not work, right? There's no stigma of I have to do it. I take a perspective of I get to do everything. And so it would be literally impossible for me not to interrelate, addiction and marriage and all of these other, suicide or death to what other people would define as work, because, I can tell you activity, I do so many things every day that people would pay to do. And I know you do too, Andy. I would pay, I joke around, but I would pay to play second base for the Padres for 1 year. I'd probably pay $1 million if they would let me play second base. Although I know they paid somebody else $4 million to work there, and he would consider it work, I would pay to do that. So it's just an activity. it's an activity that I would pay for. It's also an activity that somebody's paid to do, and they're blessed. And so I think it's an important distinguishment under the guise of productivity and accessibility, which are the key to pursuing your potential and really having a purposeful, profitable, and passionate life, is to understand that pursuit, to understand the perspective of this is just activity. How productive can I be with my activity, and how accessible am I, meaning to help others and also to access others and information to increase or accelerate what I'm trying to do, pursue my potential.
Yes. Again, I'm lost in what question do I ask next? Because there's so many avenues I want to go down. I mean, there are things I wrote down from your book. There, like all kinds of stuff. So, well, I want to ask you one of your questions about the compassionate capitalism. Not many people talk about the downsides of capitalism, and in your first chapter, you just go right in. I mean, it's something that I actually have been. It's funny. I've never read anything. I haven't read the chapter. I've perused it, and I was looking at the headings and the titles and the beginnings of paragraphs and whatnot, and I was like, God, this is something that I've been kind of contemplating. Some of the reasons that people don't. Some of the reasons we're in the predicament we're in as a culture. This journey toward making everything as easy as possible, and how that doesn't serve us, and it's how that's in my mind. I haven't done any research. I haven't done just thinking like, why are we in this predicament? We value money over everything else. We're constantly searching for what's the easiest way out. What's the app that's going to make my life easier? What's the tool I can buy in Bed Bath & Beyond that's going to, make my cooking easier? Like, tell me a little bit about that chapter and how you came, what that is.
Yeah, it starts with the idea of scarcity or abundance, right? People live in three different worlds. One of not enough. And you can see at Newport Coast, I have a friend that has a $40 million house, but unfortunately he lives in a world of not enough. There's never enough.
Right.
Then you have the world of just enough. And there's people in all different socioeconomic statuses that live, no matter what they have, it's just enough. And then I've traveled the world, especially in Africa where I do a lot of work, and there's a world of more than enough. No matter what people have. I have friends who live in a grass hut who have more than enough. And understanding, money, first of all, is just an energy. And I don't think money is the issue. I think the issue is that we don't challenge ourselves to utilize the money in the appropriate way. Like, I'm okay with things being easy to allow me to have more productivity and accessibility for what's important, to empower others to be happy, to challenge myself to provide more value than I give, to challenge myself every morning when I wake up to my biggest prayer, which is, may God put 10 people in front of me that I can help. My biggest struggle or stress is to work hard enough to provide value and still be able to receive. I'm in receivership enough to give away to others. When I shifted the paradigm, there's these three worlds. When you live in a world of not enough, you're a victim. Everything happens to you when you work in that world. Most people that live in the world of just enough live like I did. In a positive world, everything happens for me. And what happened was I had so much. I was so good at the world of just enough that I was so good at it, I overflew. I felt empty because I was so overfull. And the reason I wasn't in the world of more than enough, in true receivership, where everything doesn't happen to me or for me, but happens through me for others. And that's a great struggle. That's a great pursuit. It's a great challenge that, whether you're an ultra marathoner or, a great athlete that every day wakes up at 4 a.m. and is disciplined and has the habit machine and all the things I teach and I myself work towards. The biggest challenge is to get into every situation and carry radical humility, to be in receivership and say, I am of service. I'm working so hard, whether I'm in that office of Eddie DeBartolo saying, I'm of service to both of you, to Steve Young and to the 49ers to figure this out. I'm in receivership. I'm going to allow this all to come through me. I'm going to go ahead and analyze the salary cap. I'm going to analyze the collective bargaining agreement. I have the capacity and the knowledge to do that. That's what I noticed and learned from Leigh. I watched him. He had his own demons, right? He's an alcoholic. All types of problems. But those were the moments when the guy who taught me to be kind to my future self, when I watched him and said, wow, this guy has worked 36 straight hours to do what everyone else is too lazy to do. They're going to Bed Bath & Beyond and going through the motions and want the easy side of it. He did the work to make it easy. And, right. Ferris talks about that. Find the easy in it. Well, it's a lot of work and a lot of struggle to find the easy. But when you find the easy, then it's sustainable. It perpetuates and it accelerates everything that you want.
I mean, I think you hit on something really important there. It's do the fucking work. I mean, excuse my language,
yeah.
But I mean, there's no easy way around. There's no shortcut. Like, it's not the pursuit of easiness that's a problem. It's the desire to make things so easy that you don't have to do the work, like looking for the shortcuts.
Yeah, the easy shortcuts should give you time to do the work, right? That's the only purpose of the easy stuff.
Right,
is to give you time to be more productive and more accessible, to do the work, to be in receivership and help other people, be of service. And that doesn't mean don't make money, right? I believe in capitalism. I believe that the people who have done most on earth, will be seen to be Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, especially Warren Buffett, because he will give away billions of dollars to empower all these people, but he's also motivated other billionaires to give away their billions. And nobody will remember Steve Jobs 100 years from now, trust me, because he was not of service. He'll just be a list of CEOs that we forget,
yep.
The Lou Gerstners of the world, who I could probably say Lou Gerstner and the 25-year-old at my office have no clue who he is. But nobody will forget Bill Gates or Warren Buffett because of the service that they did, not the business. Steve Jobs was a very successful CEO, but he won't be remembered because he didn't. Let me give you an example, my favorite one of this. Vanderbilt was the richest man on earth. And 100-year anniversary from his death, his family, they didn't have one millionaire in the Vanderbilt wealth. He was the richest man on earth with 105 million, not one millionaire.
Was he the railroad guy, the railroad tycoon?
Yeah. And his success, but his greatest success, which he'll always be known for, is that he gave $2 million to Central University way back then when he died to become Vanderbilt University. That's a legacy. Everybody will know the name Vanderbilt because he was of service and did that, not because he was a mogul. Not right.
Yeah, like I wasn't even really sure. I mean, railroad, I just kind of pulled out of my ass. Like
Yeah.
Hey guys, quick break in the podcast. I'm on a mission in 2019. I'm on a mission to change as many lives as I can. And in order to do that, I got to be heard by as many people as I can. And that's where you can help me. If you know anyone that might benefit from this conversation, the conversation that I have with any of the 150 episodes I've already recorded, or of the, I don't know how many we're going to record this year, or the one you're listening to right now, if you know anyone that would benefit from that, send them a link to the podcast, to that episode. I mean, that's a one-for-one exchange. If you're super motivated and willing to, post about it on social media. Take a picture of the episode you're listening to and stick it up on Instagram and tag me. Or do the same thing in Facebook. I can't do this without a community of people who are also committed to helping people change their life. And very often the conversation in the podcast is the first start to that for a lot of people. So help me, help them, and share the message. If you want to leave a positive review in iTunes, that would be helpful too. It's all helpful. There's no wrong way to do it. So I just appreciate you being a listener and continuing to tune in and continuing to help me propagate the message. Thanks, guys.
Well, Carl Fisher, who started the Indy 500, who we did the movie with Anspa and Pizzo, which I hope comes out someday, but he was the richest man on earth 3 times and bankrupt in between.
Oh,
he was bankrupt in between. He's one of my heroes. Because, maybe I identify with one. I'm not doing it again. But, wow. Could you imagine being the richest man on earth 3 different times and bankrupt in between?
No. I mean,
Nobody knows who he is.
I can't really imagine being bankrupt once. So like that.
Yeah, please don't.
No,
Don't manifest it.
let's just wipe that away. You know, like, jeez. What was his? What was his deal? Like, how did he get to be the richest man on earth? Like, what was that?
Yeah, so he was a real estate guy. He connected the Lincoln and Holland freeways. He started Montauk in the Long Island, South Beach, and got wiped out by a hurricane.
Right.
But interesting enough, he started the Indy 500. He built the Brickyard, and the way the Brickyard was built in Indy was that the first track that he built was to prove to the Europeans that American cars were better than European cars. And so he needed a showcase to beat their cars. Well, he used asphaltum, and because of that, he had his brother try out the track. His brother actually crashed and died because of the bumps in the track.
Wow.
Then they tried to stop him from building the track, so he fought that, and he made the track out of brick. So it would have an even level to it.
Oh wait, the bumps were not from the brick. The bumps were from the asphalt.
Yeah, his asphaltum. And so then he went to the bricks. And that's where they left finally now. You know, just the last layer of bricks are there that they kissed. But he was an extraordinary entrepreneur that took all the risks. You know, I watched that movie, The Greatest Showman, and my favorite line in it is he's like, "Oh my God, you know, PT, you're going to lose that. You could lose everything." And he goes, "That's what got me here."
Right.
You got to be all in. I love that because that's the way I live my life. The difference is I don't mind being all in. I don't mind, you know, risking it all because it's all for others. Right. I have no ego. And when I do, I move my trajectory back to the radical humility so that I don't have a need to be superior, inferior, separate, anxious, fearful, fear of loss, you know, angry, frustrated, attacking, all the things that I keep my awareness at the heightened level to make sure I'm living at peace as much as possible.
I mean, that brings me right back to the question we were talking about before was how did your bankruptcy cause that shift to happen? You know, like what were some of the things that occurred that like caused that, and then you created something completely new that it didn't even exist before that?
Yeah. One of the most interesting times that had the biggest impact on my life was my mother. You know, through all the good times and the bad, you know, single mom, 6 kids, I can barely say her name without choking up. I wanted to be rich only to buy her a house and a car. The only time I had nothing growing up. We sometimes had food stamps. We, you know, we had very little, but I was super happy. I don't look for sympathy or empathy from anybody. I was super happy. The only time I wasn't happy is I caught my mom crying because we didn't have enough money. The car broke down, food, camp, you know, and I'm so grateful because, you know, my mom, my siblings are extraordinary. I call them parents' wet dreams. You know, they went to Harvard, Penn, Columbia. You had to pull them outside to go play because they studied so hard and they're so driven and they're really good people. They're real, you know, and to have 5 of them all in the Ivy League, extraordinary. But I just wanted to be rich. And the marker in my life was waking up bankrupt and realizing not only did I have to go tell Leigh Steinberg that his Midas, the kid who he bragged to everyone had a golf course in a ski mountain, was going to take Leigh Steinberg bigger than CAA, you know, the 800-pound gorilla in space, lost everything. You know, and that was, you know, to go into Warren Moon and Leigh Steinberg and tell him that Midas has fallen, that made me nervous. But I also knew that they respected my work. And, you know, what I was doing there was still working, even though I personally had screwed this up years before I met them. Yeah. Moreover, imagine having now to walk over to your mom's house and tell her not only has her golden child, you know, the one who bought her house and a car and had given her money years after years and sent her around the world and all the things, you know, besides being so happy and making her proud, right, in a whole different way. Imagine I'm choking up, going to her door and telling her, hey, you know, I lost everything, but I really screwed up because I never took your house out of my name, and I lost your house. You have to move out.
Whoa.
And then she looked at me without blinking and said, are you okay? You need, sorry, do you need anything? You need any money? Like, in my mind, I'm sitting there, scarce, I sat there worried that I disappointed her, and I saw someone of service, right? I saw why I was successful. My siblings were successful. I see it still today because she taught us unconditional love, right? She didn't tell us. She showed us, right? Kids, my kids watch me, and I don't tell them very much, but I know that they're watching me, and that was part of that day to me. I said, how could she do that? And I was so, I shifted. I said, I need to wake up to be like her, because I wasn't the parent she was. At that time I had 3 daughters. I hadn't had my son yet. And I started looking and saying, am I, all the success that I have, all the knowledge I gained, all the skills that I know, what have I given to my 3 girls? A nanny who barely spoke English, right? All the beautiful clothes in the world, and a Ferrari and a Porsche and things that they don't really care about. And meanwhile, I was shoved in a Country Squire station wagon after my mom got home from school so we could go fill up turnstiles at the 7-Eleven with greeting cards so we could go eat. We shared French fries at McDonald's, but she's giving me more, right? So that, you asked, the bankruptcy, that to me, I saw and I said, I'm on the wrong path. I'm on the wrong path. I have all these gifts, and the worst was I was going to waste them. But for all the things my mom taught me for good, compassion, all those words that don't match the, best negotiator and all the awards and accolades that they give me, they don't match. They would have died because I didn't learn the lesson that my mom wanted me to learn the most, unconditional love, right? And so that's to me my life. And here, not only was I blessed with my mom, but I married a woman like my mom, right? That was unconditional and stuck by me and told me I was lost. Even when I was successful, she kept telling me, you're lost. You're lost. This doesn't matter to me. This doesn't matter to me. I want you to do this. I want you. And she was there. She could have easily left me, right? I was not the greatest husband. And, and that changed my life. Those 2 women, to me, I said, wait a second, these 2 women are in my life to teach me something. What is the miracle that I just received? I'm going to use that miracle and show people that I still can be a fierce businessman. I still can create abundance. I can, own buildings and cars and whatever I want, but I can raise now millions of dollars to change other people's lives. Right. And to me, I'd much rather have the community center that I built in Kenya than a Ferrari any day of the week.
Right. I mean, I just put myself in that position. I'm bankrupt. I want my life to be different. I want my relationship with my kids to be different and my wife to be different, but I have no money, and that's been my focus for the last 20 years. It sounds like a good theory, like, oh yeah, I want these things, but I got to get more money first. How did you just do that? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing. I was a millionaire 9 months out of law school. That didn't make sense to anybody either, right? I never limited my port of entry. I had 100, I said to myself, as far as the making money, I came from nowhere, right? It's not like I had family relationships. I went to one of the smallest colleges in the world because they let me play football. There's 1,500 students.
Which college?
Right? Occidental College in LA.
Oh, wow.
You get Obama and Jack Kemp and Jim Mora went there, great people, but it's like this big, which is about how big I am in football. But I went there because they let me play football, and I got a scholarship, not to play football, academic. And anyway, I said to myself, I graduated law school not knowing anything and anyone, never had a real job. I was $100,000 in debt, and somehow I manifested, my first $1 million 9 months out of law school. I have an unconscious competency to attract wealth. Right? I am Midas when it comes to wealth. That wasn't my problem. It was understanding what to do with it and how to empower myself to do the right things with it. So I wasn't afraid at all. Certain things you're afraid of, certain you're not. Making money, I got really clear. I still had treated people well. Even though I lost everything, I had great knowledge now. I had extraordinary relationships. And I went on a directive And I said, it'll take me 6 months to make my first million. It actually took me less than 2 months to make my first $1 million back. Because I had all these things going for me now.
Right.
I got to clear the slate. The interesting thing about my bankruptcy is I was ready for a change. I probably could have fought bankruptcy for years. And what I decided to do, because the reason I went bankrupt, because people ask you, how do you lose over $100 million? Well, here's how. I got into a lawsuit with a neighbor, and I spent all my cash trying to prove I was right. Mm-hmm. I ended up losing the lawsuit and ended up winning a malpractice suit against my lawyers. But in the interim, I needed cash. Well, I had equity. I wasn't a moron. I had equity in my property. But I was a moron because I never asked for help. And what I assumed was just because I had equity that I could go to the bank and borrow against the equity. Mm-hmm. But in 2008, the bank stopped lending.
Right.
And I was a young 30-year-old that arrogant, and going into the banks and saying, hey, I got about $6 million in this golf course. Can I have 2? No. Well, what do you mean? We don't have to lend it to you. You're a risk. What do you mean I'm a risk? You got the property. Well, the property's going down. We're not sure by the time you pay back the loan it's going to be worth the $6 million equity. Oh. In my mind, all the great things I did, I was a moron. I couldn't borrow my own money. So I had to claim bankruptcy, not because I was truly that far under. I didn't want anyone to lose money. I let everybody take it at the time when they could sell it, whatever. I moved clean my slate knowing that I would make my money back with the relationships I had. And because people were paid their debts out of my bankruptcy, including the settlement from the malpractice suit that I won, that all went into the bankruptcy to pay everyone. That my relationships were fine because everybody got paid. In fact, it was even easy to borrow money once I started making money again because the private banks, et cetera, they may have actually made money off of me because I got into bankruptcy and left properties that had equity. They just weren't going to let me borrow it.
Right.
So I think, it was just an interesting thing. I will tell you this, because I think there's a lot of people out there that have to hear this. When I was young, if you told me I had to tell anyone that I went bankrupt, it would have been I would say, what you resist persists.
Yep.
I manifested that because I was so afraid. I thought my ego could never have taken the fact that I lost. Like the one thing, you could call me, say I have a big nose, I'm short, I'm chubby, I'm bald, whatever you want to say. But if you said I went bankrupt or I had to tell you that I went bankrupt, I honestly thought that I may have to take my own life before I would do such a thing. That's how shameful it would be for me. Yeah. And now I stand on stages. I get interviewed 5 times a day. It's in my books. It's a badge of honor. It's the thing that changed my life. That was the catalyst that, I'm spiritual and religious at the same time, but I don't have a dogmatic religion. Mm-hmm. But I believe that there was a touch of favor from the universe or God or Buddha or Jesus, Muhammad, Joseph. Somebody came down and said, here's the lesson you need to learn, brother, so you can help other people. Right. And bam, that's it.
And did you have mentors or coaches that helped you with the spiritual aspects to kind of formulate this and to put yourself together and formulate what you wanted, manifest it?
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think because of my mistakes not having a mentor, because if I had one mentor that owned a golf course, I could have easily not gone bankrupt, right? If somebody would have taught me truly about finance and the things I didn't know about, yep. a banking mentor, but I was so arrogant. So yes, I had Dr. Sangeeta Sahi teach me theta meditation and quantum healing. I'm blessed that, Blaine Bartlett in the World Bank and, of course, Bob Proctor and Jack Canfield, Warren Moon, Leigh Steinberg, even Steve Wynn. I've had extraordinary mentors. And that's actually the first thing that I decided to do was to reach out to mentors and ask people, if you were in my position, what would you do? And I'd explain my position to them. And they, and which formulated the 2 key questions in life that I have that everybody can be successful. Number 1, how can I be of service? And 2, do you know anyone that can help me? If you know those 2 questions and you consistently ask them in person, on the phone, via email and media, if you ask those 2 questions, how can I be of service And do you know anyone that can help me? You are opening up all the arms, the branches of the tree. You're opening up the oneness of the universe. You are harnessing the power in the field of intention. You will receive in such force and acceleration what you want by asking those two questions. I coach people. I'm a top business coach in the world. And it's funny because it's all based off of taking some of the biggest egos in the world and saying, hey, man, you need to ask for help.
Right. Why is that so hard? Why is it so hard for people?
I think it's ego. I think it all stems from the need to be superior, the need to be right, the need to be offended, all the different needs of the ego. The ego is based off of a fear of loss. And if we ask someone for help, that in our ego tells us that we're inferior, that there's some sort of loss, right? That we're less than.
Yep. And
there is no less than or more than. There's just, you give meaning to it. And I change my perspective when I ask for help. Is I'm giving you a gift. This is how I can raise money for charity so easily. Is that, and I do exercises. People should go back and look at my Christmas video, for the holiday video I did, because not only did I send my whole company out with money to go give it away and books to give away, but I gave them money and books to go give to people so they could give the money and books away. And because I knew that the true blessing was going to be to empower them to feel good about themselves. And giving is so beautiful because if you give, it makes you feel good and serotonin's released. If you receive, it makes you feel good and serotonin's released in your mind, which makes you happy. But the most powerful part about it is, and it's the only thing like this, if somebody witnesses giving, serotonin is released in their brain and it makes them happy. That's why you can watch an act of kindness and feel a certain way. You don't even have to be a party to it. Right. I want to empower as many people it is to give. And by asking for help, I'm empowering them with a blessing to give to me so I can give to others. It's awesome.
That's it. I didn't really make the connection between your two questions and the deeper giving and receiving. I mean, basically, your two questions are, how can I give and how can I receive? And
because they're one.
Right. But it's
giving and receiving are the same.
Yes. But like your two questions, how can I serve is giving. Like you could put it in that box, and who do you know that can help me is in a way receiving. It's not really receiving, but it is because you're asking for help.
It is receiving.
Yeah, it is receiving. Right.
I think it's tying up the universe as well. It's like, hey, I am a part of a whole. Can you help me find the other parts? Do you understand? Like, I'm a part of the whole. Help me find the other parts, and I'll be able to help them as well. I can't tell you how many times I'm making money on both sides of the deal and everybody's thanking me because I'm a compassionate capitalist. I'm looking for how I can be of service and, right, do you know anyone that can help me?
Right.
And it happens all the time.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people, that would help a lot of people if they were willing. I'm talking about myself. Screw everybody else. I don't ask that question. Who do you know that can help me? Who do you know that can, that's a really powerful question. And it immediately feels uncomfortable to me to ask that question because it makes me feel like I'm not enough. Like I don't know enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. I can't do it myself because I got this story running in my head that I am enough. I got it. Yeah. I got it. Leave me alone. I don't need any help.
And I shifted it over the years. It started out with, how can I be of service? And two, can you help me? And what I learned was that limited what I was trying to do, which is, this tree has no branches. We're all connected. So when I subtly made a change of saying, do you know anyone that can help me? Mm-hmm. It took a lot of the pressure off of my own insecurity as well as the direct ask. But it also was a very subtle way of self-inclusion because when I asked someone, if I said, Andy, do you know anyone that can help me? I'm looking for a piece of real estate in South Mission Beach or whatever. And you're included, right? Because a lot of times I'll ask a guy, they can help me? I'm looking for a good digital marketer in New York City. I got a friend who needs this, this, and this. And he's, actually, I'm a digital marketer.
Right. It's an indirect direct.
Yeah.
Right. I like that. Easier. I really like that. So what are your big things now? What are you up to? I know we're running out of time, so I want to be, we got 4 minutes.
Cool. For me, I have my last 50 for 50 birthday party. this year, last January, I turned 50, and I decided my charity, which I'm the chairman of, Unstoppable, was started by a woman on her 50th birthday, and she asked for money, not gifts, for the charity. I decided foolishly to do 50 parties and build a community center in Kenya. I'm blessed. I'm building my second one, and I'm having my 50th final party January 9th.
Wow.
My birthday is actually 11th in Las Vegas at CES, and very, very, very proud. It's one of the biggest accomplishments of my life to have those parties, to raise so much money for such a great cause. I also have my elevator pitch TV show, which is season 4 is coming up in March. We have my podcast, The Playbook, which you've been on, and we doing very well. It's extraordinary. And, you know, working for Unstoppable, the Crescent Moon Foundation is Warren's charity who gives scholarships for kids to go to college. I have a media company in the sponsorship side, which is our traditional business. One big thing that's going on in my media company, we cover the Lakers and the Clippers this year for Tencent, the big mega power in China. So we do all the coverage, the stories for them, and we just picked up MLB, NFL, and all of the NBA for next year to cover for Tencent in China. So I'm a Steph Marbury in China. I'm well known in China. And then, you know, just enjoying the pursuit of my potential. I tell people all the time, you know, if I had anything I could wish, it would be 2 things. Simply be kind to your future self and do good deeds. I think that people, like Ferris says, they make things complicated, they get in their own way. If you change your perspective and just start doing good deeds, hold doors open, pick up trash when you see it, smile at somebody, give somebody a hug, look for compliments to give them, look to give. I can't tell you how much those little things can change an entire life. I had an interesting thing happen. I let a lady go through at the grocery store in front of me, and she started to cry. And I was like, Are you okay? She goes, no. She goes, I moved here to California from the South, and everybody's so, you know, into their own thing, hurrying, traffic. And she said, I told my husband I wanted to go back home unless I saw a son. I was like,
wow.
That was it. So I changed the trajectory to be kind. And it cost me nothing. You know, there's so many things you can do every day that cost you nothing to change your life. You can eat right, you can stretch, you can exercise, you can smile, you can hug, you can run a grocery cart back to the place where it's supposed to be, you can pick up trash, and it costs nothing, and it will change your life. And the easiest thing to change your life is just say thank you before you go to bed. Say thank you when you wake up. Do it every day. I promise you it's the easiest way to change your life.
David, thank you so much. I'd love to be on the phone with you. I'd love to be on Zoom. I'd love to be anywhere with you for the next 3 hours. But I really appreciate the 50 minutes we had, and I'm very happy that our lives intersected.
Me too, and I'll do whatever it takes, my friend. Let's do this again, and I look forward to seeing you.
That'd be great.
Hey, it's Andy, and thanks so much for listening. If you want to know more about what I'm learning each month, head over to andypetronic.com and subscribe to my monthly newsletter. If you were touched, moved, or inspired by anything you heard today, chances are someone else you know would be too. Please take a moment to think about who and send them a link to this episode. And if you're super stoked, please head over to iTunes to write a review. The best way to keep current on guests and episodes is to subscribe so that the latest one will automatically get delivered straight to your phone. The apps I used for this are Apple Podcasts, Overcast, or Pocket Casts. The Andy Petronic podcast is produced by our team, Winslow Jenkins, Becca Borowski, and Ernie Hurtado. Big thanks to Nikki Grudidaria for the artwork. You can find all of our episodes, links, and complete show notes at wholelifechallenge.com/podcast. I'm Andy Petronic. Thanks for listening.